All eyes this Orlando Magic season are on Wendell Carter, what he has to prove and what he has to do to be part of the team's future today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is September 16th. It will be September 17th, 2024. My name is Philip Rostenreich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, all eyes on Wendell Carter. The stakes for him this season in 2025. What is on the line? The trade bind the Magic might be in if they do decide to move on from him, and how the Magic complete their starting lineup. We'll get to all that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Wendell Carter isn't what a lot of people think of when they think of the starting center of a championship team. Like, plain and simple, I could guarantee, if you're not listening to this podcast too early, if you're watching on YouTube and you're not watching it like when it premieres, I can guarantee there will be a comment very, very quickly that says Wendell Carter is not the starting center for a championship team, or Wendell Carter isn't a good enough defender or shot blocker, or whatever the case may be. The question with Wendell Carter, it's a little bit more complex than that. I think that is oversimplifying the case, or oversimplifying the stakes for Wendell Carter. Wendell Carter is a very capable center. He is a very versatile player, checks off a lot of the boxes the Magic like. He can shoot from the outside. He can play as your fulcrum, your pivot, I call him the fulcrum, from the high post. He can work the low block. He can work the offensive glass. He can rebound pretty well. The numbers actually like his rebounding a little bit more than people think. He can defend the rim, but positionally, and get out and defend the perimeter. As the Magic try to figure out what they need to take the next step, whatever that next step might be, as the Magic try to figure out what that is, Wendell Carter still feels like this moldable clay, this adaptable clay that can fit into whatever role the Magic might need. The Magic, because of their lack of shooting, probably don't want a center clogging up the lane. They probably don't want a center who is only good for rim running and putbacks. They need someone who can work the high post, who can work out to the three-point line. They need someone who can defend both the paint and the perimeter, allowing them to switch and do some different things defensively. Wendell Carter allows them to do all of that. But there's no denying that despite the success the Orlando Magic had in 2024, despite all the things that went right last year, this was not Wendell Carter's best season. This was not the Wendell Carter the Magic hope for, the Wendell Carter the Magic need, the Wendell Carter that is essential to this team's success and to this team's future. By every measure, by at least the raw counting stats, this was the worst season Wendell Carter had since coming back, since coming to the Orlando Magic in that trade back in 2021. On top of that, the continued question about his injury and his health were not answered. I know I spent so much time last summer saying you have to bet on Wendell Carter missing 15 to 20 games, and frankly, that's the conservative estimate. Because once again, he missed 15 to 20 games. He missed more than that. He's played in 60 games or more in a season just once in his career. And that is now a problem. For as good as Goga Bitadze played, as good as Mo Wagner played, Wendell Carter is still their answer. It's still the best answer. And yet he is coming off a season where he averaged the fewest points since his arrival in Orlando. 11 points per game, 6.9 rebounds per game, onto 7.7 field goal attempts per game. Now, maybe some of this is a redistribution of shots. Paolo is taking more shots. Franz is taking more shots. Maybe some of that is the hand injury that slowed him down early in the season, made him hesitant to be physical, to go into the paint more, to catch, to make those catches in traffic, to go up quick. The fact that Wendell Carter is not an above-the-rim center, someone who plays above the rim, who rim runs and goes for alley-oops on everything. You just throw the ball near the basket, he will put it down. That's not who Wendell Carter is on either end of the floor. But Wendell Carter is still really good. Wendell Carter still did good things last year, even if all of his numbers were down, even if it's clear he still has work to do. Opponents shot just 58.4% at the rim against him, according to Second Spectrum. That was only slightly worse than his 2023 season, which was his best season. And the Magic had a 109.6 defensive rating with Carter on the floor. That trailed only Franz Wagner among starters. Wendell Carter is a bit of a paradox in that way. He's this versatile, skilled big man. As everyone, you can go deep into my archives and check out my draft stuff on Wendell Carter. Everyone called him the jack of all trade, master of none. And that's super valuable. That shouldn't be an insult. But now the Magic have to figure out exactly what they need. And so, more than anything else, coming off of a career worst season, all eyes are on Wendell Carter. All the pressure is on Wendell Carter. We'll talk a little bit about why coming up here in a minute. But all the pressure is on him. He is extension eligible. He has 2 years left on his deal. The Magic are trying to win now. They need to figure out what they need to be successful. They're not just sitting and waiting and hoping for development. They need results. And frankly, Carter wasn't good last year. And we can blame the injuries, and that's been a repeated story throughout his career. He will miss 15 to 20 games. He missed 20 games with the broken hand. He admitted after the season he came back too quickly from that injury, needed surgery on it again after the season, entered the playoffs with back spasms. He wasn't 100% for his first playoff series, struggled a bit in that playoff series as well. It's as much as anyone on this roster, it's time for Wendell Carter to step up. It's time for him to establish his role. To tell us and tell the league who he is and what he can do at the highest levels. We talk about this a lot. The playoffs are when your weaknesses are really revealed. And when you really find out who thrives under that pressure and under that attention and who maybe doesn't. After one go-around in the playoffs, I don't think we can draw conclusions. We're not going to sit here and say, oh, Franz Wagner is not a primetime player. He's had big games. A big game 6 for crying out loud. Just because of one bad game. I'm not going to sit here and say that about Wendell Carter. And while I don't think Wendell Carter would ever admit this, he played those playoffs hurt. Back spasms don't just go away. His back was probably a bigger mess than he's letting on. And obviously, very shortly after the season ended, he had surgery again, a second surgery on that left hand. So now the point comes clear. Wendell Carter has to prove himself. He has to be that anchor defensively. Don't need him to block 2-3 shots per game, but continue to be aggressive, challenging shots. Be more assertive on the glass. 7-8 rebounds per game instead of the 6 that he had last year. To be more of a scoring threat, a more reliable jump shooter, to be a roll option as much as a pop option. I felt like last year he deferred to his jumper way more than normal. Maybe that was planned. Maybe that was part of the strategy. But the Magic need a center who's going to roll hard to the rim and take some defenders with him to allow Paolo to get some jumpers. Wendell Carter has to be healthy, most of all. He needs a season where he plays 65, 70 games. He's never had a season like that. And that's going to be the challenge for Wendell Carter. Last year's over. It was bad. It wasn't everything the Magic needed. He gave a lot. It wasn't everything the Magic needed. If the Magic are going to be a better team, and quite frankly, if Wendell Carter is going to be a part of this team moving forward, it starts with Wendell Carter getting back to his production, being that physical, versatile center that everybody knows and loves. Because as we look, and I mentioned this yesterday, but as we look at this starting lineup, the center spot is the biggest question mark of them all. We're going to talk about how Wendell Carter completes this starting lineup coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Gametime. Basketball season is almost here. Just another couple of weeks. We're 2 weeks away from training camp. I misspoke on yesterday's show. 2 weeks away from training camp. 3 weeks away from the first road preseason game up in New Orleans. But 4 weeks away now from the Magic's first preseason home game. We're going to be in the Kia Center very, very soon. And if you want to be there for preseason or for the opening night games, for the opening games of the season, Gametime has you covered. Gametime even has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I've used Gametime before for tickets. I usually keep an eye on what's going on with Gametime for events that I want to go to, like Weezer's in town this Friday. I am thinking of going to that concert. I've been waiting and holding off buying tickets just in case I have to work on Friday. If I need last-minute tickets to the big show, Gametime is where I'm going to go. I know they'll have great last-minute deals. I know that they'll be able to fix any problems that I might have, and Gametime is just the best. With Gametime, you can use the customize your spot feature as well. You can find curated deals. You can find super deals. You can find everything. They even have all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. You can get digital views of your seats so you know what the stage is going to look like or the court's going to look like from your seats. And with the lowest price guarantee, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find cheaper tickets elsewhere. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day. For your next listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. There is no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as Locked On NBA. It's available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So I mentioned this a little bit yesterday, but I want to bring this conversation back in the context of Wendell Carter and in the context of what this means for the Magic. If you look at the Magic starting lineup, it feels very set in stone. Certainly set in stone for this year. I don't see this lineup changing at all. Jalen Suggs, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Wendell Carter. That's your starting five. Again, we'll talk about a few things about that on tomorrow's episode, but that's the starting five for this team. When you look a little further, though, when you start to game it out a few years in the future, well, Franz Wagner signed a max contract. He's under contract for the next 6 seasons. Paolo Banchero's got 2 years left on his deal. He'll get a 5-year extension. He's on the team for the next 7 seasons. Jalen Suggs has 1 year left on his deal. He's going to get an extension. He's on the team for the next 5 years. That's 3 of your 5 starting spots. There are 3 core players occupying starting spots on the team. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is 31 years old. He'll be 32 very soon. He just signed a 3-year deal. He's probably not going anywhere for at least another year or so, but you assumedly signed him thinking he's going to complete that 3-year deal. That leaves only one spot really kind of up for grabs. And Wendell Carter does have 2 years left on his contract. So the starting lineup feels very set in stone. And what's going to happen throughout the 2025 season, and I will be driving this point home as we begin to set expectations and talk about what this season's going to be about. This season is about finding the fault lines. What does this team need to do to get to the next level? What are the roadblocks? Where are we bumping our head against our ceiling? That's what the 2025 season's about. Right now, this team is so young. It feels so unbounded. It really does feel like the potential for this team is through the roof. Who knows what this team's potential is? Who knows what's even possible with this team? This team still has so much room to grow, and like this is a team right now with a limitless ceiling and a very high floor. We know what the floor of this team is. Last year was kind of the floor of this team. But as we go through this process again, as we go through the ups and downs of winning and losing basketball games, because that's what an NBA season is, as we go through playoff failures, as I mentioned yesterday, we're going to begin to learn where the fault lines are. And certainly I think a lot of people see it at center. A lot of people see problems at the center position. Yes, Wendell Carter had a very rough season last year. Injuries, all of it was bad. And the Magic were reportedly, at least, fishing around for some center options. Like we did an episode on Isaiah Hartenstein. We talked a little bit about Nick Claxton. The part of what made maybe a Trae Young trade work, if the Magic wanted to do that, or DeJounte Murray trade work, is the Magic could trade Wendell Carter and get back a rim-protecting, rim-running center in Clint Capella. Now, I'd argue Wendell Carter's better than him, so I don't think I think that's kind of moot. But I think the Magic were hesitant to do any of these trades. And they're hesitant to really upset the apple cart because they don't know what the team needs. And this is, again, like I said this a million times last year. I will still say it. You don't really know what you need until you get in the playoffs and you see what you need. And when we look back at that playoff series, the point guard and playmaking issue seemed a lot bigger of a deal than the center issue. Now, Jared Allen killed the Magic in games 1 and 2. I do think that series may go a little differently if Jared Allen plays game 5, 6, and 7. But not that much differently. I mean, Magic won games 3 and 4 with Allen in there. Allen did not play game 5. The Magic had a really good chance to win game 5 on the road. So who knows? Who knows if the Magic would have won game 6 with Allen there? Who knows? The center spot did not seem to be a major fault line in the playoff series. Some of you may disagree. It certainly felt like the playmaking issue was a bigger deal. But we all certainly do recognize that, again, Wendell Carter has to hold his own. He has to be a more assertive rebounder. He has to be a solid lane protector. I don't think we can necessarily call him a rim protector because he's just not a shot blocker of that type. But he's very good at keeping you from getting to the basket to begin with. And maybe that's too tight of a tightrope to walk. And that's maybe the Magic this year are in the 3-6 against Philadelphia and they have to play Joel Embiid for 4, 5, 6, 7 games. And we're like, okay, if we're really going to compete in the East, we got to be able to deal with Embiid. And while Wendell Carter typically does does okay against Embiid, you need a little bit more. Maybe. That's going to, again, be part of what we discover with Wendell Carter and why Wendell Carter has a lot riding on him this season because he has to prove that he can complete the starting lineup. The other 4 spots, at least for the next 2 years, are all set. It's Wendell Carter's spot that feels the most up in the air. Now, maybe the Magic discover, okay, Jalen Suggs can't handle the point guard duties. We need to go out and get an actual guard. Maybe that puts Kentavious Caldwell-Pope on the block. Or maybe that puts Suggs himself on the block. I doubt that. Maybe that becomes more of a pressing issue and the Magic decide we can't work on this internally. Wendell Carter's very good for what he is. We're not trading Wendell Carter unless we get someone better back. But maybe that's part of the equation here. Still, there are teams that are interested in Wendell Carter. It's clear that Carter does have at least a little bit of a market. And how the Magic approach that market, how the Magic approach Wendell Carter's future will have a lot to do with how they approach the rest, the next phase of their development. Again, we're devoting a whole episode to Wendell Carter because not only does Wendell Carter have to improve, but what the Magic do with him next very might determine their next big move. We're going to talk about the trade market for Wendell Carter coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You have heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, that's Sunday, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. FanDuel already has some great NBA odds up, including the Orlando Magic at, I believe, plus 1,700 to win the Eastern Conference. That is 5th or 6th among Eastern Conference teams. They have the Magic at over under 47.5 wins. Essentially, do you think the Magic will have a better record than they did last year? They have them as the favorites, I believe, at minus 140 to win the Southeast Division. And of course, you can bet the Magic's opening night game against the Miami Heat, Orlando +1 right now against Miami on October 23rd when the regular season begins. All you have to do is just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook to take advantage of all those great deals, as well as the great deal with YouTube TV and NFL Sunday Ticket. Check it out today. FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. We've talked a little bit about this. I'm not big into the kind of trade mongering and trade rumor mill, but it's undoubtedly the next step. The next step for this Orlando Magic team, because they are all capped out. They are over the salary cap for next season. Before we get Jalen Suggs' extension, they're not playing free agency anymore. And that's the point. That's okay. The Magic are better set up now to make trades than they were last summer and last year. That's how this team is going to get better. Whatever trade, whatever deal that they have, whatever they decide is the next step, it's going to come in the trade market. And undoubtedly, Wendell Carter is probably quietly already one of the hotter names on the trade market. If the Magic are going to trade Wendell Carter, it's going to be at the deadline or next summer when there's still another year left on his contract. He's extension eligible. This is the time that his market will be at its peak, even coming off of a career worst season, or not a career worst season, but a recent worst season. There are a lot of teams that are interested. Our friends at Locked On Pelicans pitched a fake Wendell Carter trade, I believe, last week. I read so many Bleacher Report. I get so many Bleacher Report alerts on my Google alerts that have Wendell Carter going to the Los Angeles Lakers. There are a lot of teams that need a quality big man like Wendell Carter. And the speculation people and all that stuff, they are pitching Wendell Carter trades. for any Orlando Magic trade to work, frankly, it takes Wendell Carter. Because they're not trading Jalen Suggs. They're not trading Jonathan Isaac. And at least for now, they're not trading Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Those are probably your most valuable trade pieces, unless Cole Anthony comes out gangbusters. And even then, and at that point, you're probably not going to want to trade him. Wendell Carter is the guy, is the player, is the asset that might take the Magic to their next step. But like I said, the Magic aren't in a position to trade him. Look, Goga Bitadze is great. I think Goga Bitadze is a test case for this is what a rim-running center looks like with this Magic team. Give me a center who can shoot jumpers a little bit, and that might be what you're actually looking for. Because Bitadze is a little bit better of a shot blocker than Carter. Certainly a better rim runner and low post presence. He just doesn't have the shooting or defensive versatility. If Wendell Carter does have to miss 15 games, Orlando, I think, is very, very comfortable starting Goga Bitadze and, frankly, platooning Jonathan Isaac into some center minutes in the process. The Magic aren't going to be afraid to do that. Goga proved to us all last year that he can start in those games. Whether that limited play gave them confidence for the playoffs is another question. Whether Goga Bitadze can get better or better enough to be like, okay, he can be a stopgap center option, then so be it. But there are a lot of teams looking for centers. You'll already seeing Robert Williams trade pitches from the Washington Wizards. I would argue, the Hawks are trying to give Clint Capella away. Like whoever will take Clint Capella, the Hawks will give him to you. I think the Jazz might maybe be open to trading Walker Kessler, a more traditional rim protector. Someone who is at least trying to add a three-point shot to his game, whether you want him shooting threes or not. The Jazz did not start him last year. That could be an interesting option, but are any of those options really better than Wendell Carter? Maybe Robert Williams, as he comes with his own history of injury. But the Knicks are looking for center. The Pelicans are looking for a center. The Lakers are looking for a center. Finding the right player to not only fit the Magic's identity, but what the Magic want is difficult. And frankly, Wendell Carter at his best does that. Now, does he do it at a playoff level? Does he do it at a level that elevates this team? Could the Magic find a Daniel Gafford type trade closer to the deadline? Sure. Could the problem be from last year that the Magic didn't run enough stuff for Wendell Carter because Paolo and Franz were starting to suck up more oxygen? Sure. But Wendell Carter does and has all of the skills the Magic really want from that center position. At least for now. Is that ultimately what's going to help them win a title? And again, everything comes back to that question. That's where we're at. That's what we're competing for. That's what's at stake for the Magic. Does it help the team win a championship? Does it help complete this roster so that they can advance further, compete for the Eastern Conference Finals, compete for the finals? Those are the answers, frankly, we don't have yet. It's why we need a second trip to the playoffs. It's why winning a championship, despite what happened in 95 and to some extent 2009, it's not a one-year trip. It is a multi-year journey. And now that the Magic have made the playoffs and shown us what they're capable of doing, they got to do it again, and they got to do it better. And where they fall short and where they come back down to earth, that's what's going to tell us and teach the front office what they need to evolve next. Look, very clearly Orlando is heavily invested in Paolo, Banchero, Franz Wagner, and Jalen Suggs. That is their core group. Those are the three players they're trying to enhance and improve. Maybe things will change along the way. Maybe they'll say, maybe they'll say in 2 or 3 years, Franz isn't the right guy to be around Paolo. Let's go swap him for somebody else. That happens. That's The Celtics traded Marcus Smart, their heart and soul. Is a big concern for them. Turned out to be the right move. Getting Kristaps Porzingis was huge. They ended up still having the ability to go get Drew Holiday. It's huge. And it's going to be little moves that make them better in the long run too. And so this year is Wendell Carter's chance to put his best foot forward. There are teams that want him. There are teams that want him. Whether they have what the Magic want is the next question. Whether they have the thing that makes the Magic better, because the Magic aren't selling. They're buying. They want to be better. They're not looking to clear cap. They're not looking to add draft picks. They want to be better. They're not selling off a starting player who's key to what they do. So this is Wendell Carter's chance to show the league, to show the Magic that he completes this lineup. That he is key to unlocking this team in their next phase. And that will be the biggest challenge for the Orlando Magic this season. Wendell Carter has got to do what he hasn't done his entire career. He's got to be healthy. He's got to make it through the entire season. And he's got to play well doing it. It's a lot to ask. But as I said, all eyes are on Wendell Carter Jr. I want to thank you all for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast and Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all of them may sell podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. That is where I'm posting all of my player outlooks and my player profiles for the upcoming season. So if you want my take on every player, we'll talk a little bit about them here on the show, but we'll talk about them more on my Patreon page. And as always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done listening to me, be sure to check out the Locked On NBA podcast, where the local experts keep you updated daily on all the biggest storylines ahead of the season. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. On tomorrow's episode, I ran a little poll on my social media asking for your confidence in the Orlando Magic. We'll go over some of those results and what it means for the upcoming season and the challenges ahead for 2025. We'll talk about all that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.